Welcome back to the show. Today, I want to share some thoughts with you on tap into your power. Tap into your power. I'm going to share ideas and concepts from a guy named Tony Robbins, who wrote a book years ago called Unlimited Power. So this episode, is really his words, his advice to all of us. He says in his book that power is a very emotional word. Think about that a minute. Think about just using the word power and what images that portrays in your own mind. It brings up a lot of images in my mind. He says, how much power do you want? How much power do you think is right for you to obtain or develop? I think you and I sometimes think that we don't have the power that we need to do some really extraordinary things in our own lives. He says, every communication we make is an action and a cause set in motion. Have you ever played a game where you have little sticks standing up or playing a dominoes game, and you just push one of them and everything else tends to fall down behind it? I think sometimes you and I are afraid to get something started in order for other things to happen that can change your life in a dramatic way. He says this, he says, how many of you have something that you wanted to create? How many of you have the physical power and the charisma of a chunky old man in a wild suit? He said, Colonel Sanders made a fortune because he had the ability to take massive, determined action. He had the personal power necessary to produce the results he desired most. He had the ability to hear the word, he had the ability to hear the word no 1,000 times and still communicate to himself in a way that got him to knock on the next door and totally convinced that it could be the one where someone said, yes, we've heard Kentucky Fried Chicken. This is what I'm talking about. So many people would not allow him to start his business and to share his formula for some delicious fried chicken. A guy named Ron talked to me years ago, probably more than 12 years ago now. He told me this. He says, John, some will, some won't, so what next? Again, some will, some won't, so what next? If you and I really want to tap into your power, and certainly my power, then we have to get through this concept that you are maybe created, maybe you're in a situation right now where you're placed in an environment, whether it's at work or in your family or in your neighborhood or in some social setting, that you can change that setting in a dramatic way by just adjusting a couple things in your life. Tony Robbins, he says that the lesson is that most people can do virtually anything as long as they muster the resources to believe they can take effective action. You know, the hardest part of doing stuff is getting started. Think about that a minute. The hardest part of getting stuff done is really getting started. He says there are consistent, logical patterns of action, specific pathways to excellence that are within the reach to us all. You know, I say this in a lot of the shows that we do, that most people think that the people who've created really great things were born that way, or they just happen to fall into it. And if you read through even Bill Gates and certainly other people that have created billion-dollar businesses, it really started in a very, very small way. So if you think that maybe you have to have all these billions in these investments to create something really, really good, that's not the case at all. All you need is a little seed, an idea, and then water that seed and circle yourself with people who believe in that seed, but you have to have passion. I've been in sales for, my goodness, now 30 plus years. And the people that tend to succeed more times than not are people that are passionate. You know, I've worked with people who can't read or write, and they made at the time, 15, 20 years ago, $100,000 a year, but they can't read or write. Why? Because they have passion. They didn't allow their inabilities, they didn't allow their struggles, they didn't allow what they didn't have to get in the way of what they wanted. I think that's a struggle that you might face sometimes in your own life, that you look at what you don't have and realize that just because I don't have it means that I can't achieve certain things. That's not necessarily true. What you have is more than what most people have. If you live in the United States of America, you have way more opportunity than people in certain parts of the world who really have no opportunities at all. The book goes on. He says, people who succeed on a major scale differ greatly in their beliefs from those who fail. He says, our beliefs about what we are and what we can precisely determine what we will be. If we believe in magic, we'll live a magical life. If we believe our life is defined by narrow people, we'll live within those perimeters. That's why for me, again, I'm not 22 anymore, but the older I'm getting, I'm being very particular who I allow in my circle. And those circles include being online. And for me, I really hate to block people online. I think it's not polite for me, but I had to start blocking a number of people in my world and keeping certain people away from me in my world because they're negative, because they're discouraging, because they're not uplifting, they're pushing down, they're being ignorant, they're being nasty and rude. And I think sometimes you have people in your own circle, and I hate to say this, but sometimes these people are family members that you allow, that you invite, that you go hang out with, that tear you down, that drag you down when they have no business being in your circle. Would you sleep in a pile of poison ivy and expect not to get poison ivy? Most of us who maybe would do that would probably get poison ivy. When we built our house in the woods when our kids were small, there were many times when a couple of the kids would go running in the woods and not knowing where poison ivy was, and within a few days, man, sometimes their eyes were swollen shut, they had poison ivy all over their arms and legs because they didn't know any better. They would run through the woods and play in the woods and pick up the poison and do all these other things because they didn't know it was poison. I'm telling you today that there are people in your life that are like poison ivy, that you have no business hanging around because they're not contributing to your success. They're not feeding, they're not giving you full fuel that can help you achieve some really good stuff in your life. Let me go back to the book. You can open a door by breaking it down, or you can find the key that opens the door intact. What I'm saying here is that you have to create an environment in your own life and build the tools in your own life that you can open doors of opportunities that a lot of people will not invest the time to learn how to open the doors. And opening the doors means studying. It means learning from people who've been there and done that. He says in the book, nearly all successful people have in common an extraordinary ability to bond with other people, the ability to connect with and to build rapport with people in a variety of backgrounds and beliefs. I cannot overemphasize that enough. I have found in my own life that you learn more by asking questions. Think about that a minute. You can't learn if you're talking. I can't learn anything if I'm talking, because if I think I know everything, then I'm not going to be open to hearing the advice from other people. So I constantly look for and seek out information that can help me unlock the doors that I'm trying to get through in my life. And I think you might want to do the same thing, because if you're not initiating those conversations and asking those questions of people that know a lot more than you do, then you're not going to get where you need to get to. Let me give you another example. There's a young man that I'm mentoring now that is in prison. I'm not going to get into the story behind it or use his name, but he's in his early 20s, and he is in a situation where he has no control. He's in a prison. He has to do what he's told to do every single day. He's never been in prison before. This is a whole new thing for him. He should be getting out, I hope, really soon. The point is, while he's there, I'm investing into his mind, because his surroundings he can't control. But if I can get into his head in a good way, in a positive way, that can enable him to leverage information and tools that people have helped me with over the years, then when he gets out, he may not place himself in the same situation that he was that got him in there. And think about that in your own life. You might not be in a literal prison for sure. Maybe you're in a mental prison, or maybe you're in an emotional prison. Or maybe you're in a relational situation where you feel like you're confined. Well, if you choose, it starts up here, believe it or not, it starts with your mind. And I can only speak for me because I'm not you, But sometimes you have to play mind games with yourself consistently if you want to get through some of the darkest times in your life. Because if you don't play those mind games with yourself, then guess what's going to happen? You're going to devolve instead of evolve. So you have to master the ability, and this doesn't happen overnight, but you have to master the ability to seek out information from people who know more than you do. I'm surrounded by a core of people that are really good at certain things. And if I want to master some of what they're doing, then it just makes sense to go to those people and seek out their advice and their counsel, because 9.9 times out of 10, they're going to be willing to help you and me learn what you're asking them about. Very few people are going to be, I'm not going to share what I know. That's not typically how it works. Let me get back to the book. He says, people who succeed in life are those who've learned how to take any challenge that life gives them and communicate that experience to themselves in a way that causes them to successfully change things. I go back to the story years ago of, is the glass half full or half empty, or is it overflowing? And there were many, many times when I've been out on sales appointments in the insurance side of my life, and I'd be in 3.5 hours away, 2 hours away in another state, way far away from home, seeing people, hopefully selling insurance, helping families, and time after time after time, I'd get shut down. Or people, like just the other day, I met with a colleague. We got in the car. We drove over a half an hour to this appointment. It was pouring down rain. I held the umbrella over my colleague's head. She's a lady, out of respect, and so the sales rep had called the woman, said, "We're coming over." "Sure, come on over." Again, we get to the door. The woman, we call, we ring the bell, we knock. The lady said, "I'm coming downstairs." She never comes to the door. So we're standing out there getting wet, a little cold, a little chilly, and she's refusing to open the door. I go back to what I said earlier. Some will, some won't. So what next? If you and I choose to internalize, if you and I choose to internalize the actions of other people, then the actions of other people will literally derail you from where you're going. I'm guilty of that almost every day. I allow the actions of other people, to derail me from the path that I'm trying to go down mentally. Think about that a minute. Why do you and I allow outside forces, people, comments, attitudes, emotions, to disrupt our peace of mind, to get us off track of where we're trying to go in our own lives? It's a habit that I'm still working on for decades, unfortunately. I'm dense, maybe you are too, to allow these negative people, whoever they are, wherever they are, in whatever situation, to allow you to get distracted. I was on the way to the studio today, and this traffic light was not turning green. The other cars went the other way 2 times. And our traffic light never turned green. So I decided I'm not going to sit here all day. I'm going to take another route. Sometimes you and I have to take another route to get where we need to get to because of external situations. Think about that a minute. Sometimes you and I have to stop waiting for stuff to happen. Sometimes you have to make stuff happen. Sometimes you need to take another route in order to get to where you're going to. The book says less than 10% of people who buy a book read past the first chapter. Listen. At first, I couldn't believe this statistic, he says. Then I remembered that less than 3% of the nation is financially independent. Less than 10% have written goals. Only 35% of certain people and less of others felt that they were in great shape. And many people states that maybe they didn't think that they could achieve anything at all. Why? Because they don't take consistent action. I can tell you over and over again, you get sick of me saying it, but if you don't take consistent action daily, then certain things are not going to change. I was at the gym just 24 hours ago. There's a colleague, not a colleague, but a guy I know who works in Annapolis, Maryland. He's a politician, really good guy, and he was very thin. I looked at him and said, "Whoa!" And I called him over to, I was on the bike at that time. I said, I think I want to change your name to Skinny. He said, what are you talking about? I said, look at all this weight you lost. What happened? So he proceeded to tell me that he decided to make some certain changes in his life. So he lost, I think he said like 15 or 18 pounds or something in the last few months, because he decided to make some changes in his life. Again, your changes don't happen in your life or my life unless we take certain steps and action consistently. You can't stop and start. Like me, I have a tendency, I get on this bandwagon of eating well, and then just yesterday I go out and buy a box of Krispy Kreme donuts, and I eat half the box within 24 hours. Or almost half the box in 24 hours, or less than 24 hours. And then I'm talking about going to the gym and staying in shape, but yet I go out and buy junk food that I shouldn't be eating. Again, we're talking about consistent action here today, right? The book says, Bunker Hunt, a Texas oil billionaire, was asked once if he had any one piece of advice he could give to teach people how to do well in life. He said that it's simple. First, you decide what you want specifically. Second, you decide if you're willing to pay the price to make it happen, and then you pay the price. Let me share it again. He says, first, you decide what you want specifically. Second, you decide then if you're willing to pay the price to make it happen, and then you pay that price. Sometimes you and I talk about wanting to do certain things and achieve certain things, but we're unwilling to do the things that we need to do consistently in order to make that stuff happen. For me, I have to write it down. If I don't write it down, then excuses are going to pop up, reasons why I don't want to do certain things. Maybe I get distracted. In fact, I know I get distracted more times than I care to share here. That then detours me from getting certain things done at a certain time. So I make all these excuses why I can't and shouldn't. Maybe I need to do certain things, but this fire popped up, that fire popped up, this issue popped up. So really it's an excuse. A lie is just an excuse wrapped around it, right? Maybe because I really didn't want to do it. Maybe that certain day I didn't want to go to the gym, or maybe that certain day I didn't want to eat a piece of fruit instead of eating 10 cookies in a day. Yeah, I'm guilty as charged, right? So how bad do you want it? Are you writing down your goals every single day? Let me go back to the book. He said, it is how we perceive it and what we do about what happens that makes a difference. I had a colleague that I worked with. In fact, he was my boss back in 2007. He decided, I built a sales force of about 32 to 35 agents, sales reps, over the prior couple years. And he called me up one day. He says, John, I took the liberty of cleaning out your office. Where do you want your stuff? I said, excuse me? I said, I took the liberty of cleaning out your office. Where do you want your stuff? See, I had caught him in some substantial lies, and he had stolen a considerable sum of money from some colleagues of mine, and I caught this happening, and he found out that I knew, and he decided to end my employment. So I went from making a very high income, relatively speaking, to a very low income within about 90 days. And that has still to this day, I'll have to admit now, it's been 11 years ago, and it is still, or almost 11 years ago, still messing with my head every single day. Even talking about it, I can feel the anger and the rage popping up in me because I choose to bring that stuff up. It's stupid. How many times haven't you brought stuff back into your own mind, into your own world, that you should have let go a long time ago? I do it all the time. It's embarrassing to even talk about it because you do the same thing. We bring up stuff that's happened to us in the past that, guess what? We can't go back in time and change it. So if you can't go back and change what the guy did to you or the woman did to you or what the neighbor did to you or what the relative did to you, there's nothing you can really do about it except use it as a stepping stone. And that's certainly easier said than done. So the book says actions are the source of all results. How many times haven't you had a desire to do certain things or to start a habit that maybe you've seen other people do and succeed? But until you take those consistent actions day in and day out, then guess what? You're not going to do certain things. Let me give you another example. The older I get, I realize, and through reading from information from really, really smart people, is that the really, really smart people embrace doing things that they don't have a clue how to do. Think about that a minute. The really smart people tend to embrace projects that they don't know how to do on the front end. They learn as they go. And I thought for a long time that you had to learn before you did stuff. But that's not necessarily always the case. Sometimes you do stuff and learn as you go. So I encourage you to do that, to not think that you have to be a master at what you're attempting to achieve, but yet you become a master by doing things consistently, and then you tweak and adjust and get better every day. The book says, the movers and shakers of the world are often professional modelers. Think about this. People who have mastered the art of learning everything they can by following other people's experience rather than their own. Other people's experiences. That's why I'm fanatical about reading information about people who have succeeded. Because why should I reinvent the wheel when I can read about people who've invented the wheel and made things better? I think it just makes sense. But 99% of the public do not read books about successful people. That makes no sense to me. So you're not standing on the shoulders of giants at all. You're starting at the very bottom and trying to figure it out on your own. And you don't have to. There's tools out there that you and I can use every day if we choose to stand on their shoulders and learn from them. The book says you can teach a dog patterns that will improve its behavior, and you can do the same thing with people. You can literally play mind games with yourself. I know a guy that when he was discouraged, he would say, I feel good, I feel fine, I feel this way all the time. He would almost chant it. I feel good, I feel fine, I feel this way all the time. And even though he was sick, he had a cold, he had the flu, he didn't feel like doing certain things, so he would chant this for a few minutes at a time until he got his emotions up to a point by what he was letting out of his mouth. Think about that a minute. What you allow to leave your mouth goes into your ears, which then goes into your mind. So that's why the older I get, the more intentional I am about the words that I allow out of my mouth. I'm not always successful, I have to tell you. Sometimes the words that come out of my mouth are not very nice. Sometimes they're not very motivational. In fact, they're downright negative. And I have to catch myself after the fact sometimes, because I realize that once these negative words come out of my mouth, they go into my ears, and then guess what happens? My mind starts making to happen what is coming out of my mouth. So for me, I would rather just clam up and shut up and internalize stuff than allow my ears to hear what's going on in my mind. Does it make any sense? So you have to watch what comes out of your mouth, because it does impact where you're going to go in your own life. So the first opportunity, the first, I think, mechanism that you and I need to place in our own lives is to check your belief structure, to see what the foundation of your own beliefs are, and then you maybe have to remap that. I've in the last year or so, I've been realigning my beliefs in certain areas of my life, because certain areas of my life I thought certain things were true, and then I realized over a period of time that they're not true. So all this time was believing something that's not true, and then basing my life on something that it's full of holes. I think you might be in the same situation at some times in your life, where you look at your life and you realize that all this time I've been looking at things the wrong way. So I'm wondering why the results are not the way they should be, because you're believing the wrong thing. Another tool that this author shares, he says the next thing is to look at how you are physiologically. That is, when you're excited and when you're motivated, you act a certain way, you breathe a certain way, you talk a certain way, you throw your shoulders back in a certain way, whereas when you're discouraged, your head's down, your face is down, your shoulders are down. So Tony Robbins talks about how if you want to play a mind game with yourself, he says this in other books, act the way that you want to feel. Again, act the way that you want to feel. Is that hard to do for you? It is for me sometimes, because I don't really want to act the way I want to feel. I'm feeling the way I'm acting, right? When you don't feel like doing certain things, what do? You get demotivated, you breathe shallower, you talk slower, or your shoulders go down, you walk slower. In fact, in the sales business that I've been in for a lot of years, sometimes you got to fake it until you make it, the old saying is. So if you want to feel motivated, sometimes you need to act motivated. Sometimes you need to play these mind games with yourself that, you know what, if you don't choose to play these games, to realign what's going on in your own head and start using the words and surround yourself with quotes and people and information and tools that can help you reach a level that nobody in your family has ever achieved, guess where that starts? That starts with you. That starts with your own personal power in your own life to decide that no matter what's going on around me, no matter if my family members, my peers, my coworkers are going down a certain path that's negative, I'm going to walk this way, and that path is going to be different based on my own personal power. I hope a couple things that I shared with you today are going to help you realign some things that's going on right in your own head that's going to determine where you're going to end up tomorrow and next year and the following year. My name is John Carver, and I appreciate you watching, and we'll be back real soon. Thanks so much.